most founders and people running startups, they will run into a bottleneck either on the floor with their people or other spots. Usually people will try to add personnel in their own area. The what I call the home field advantage, people in your area, people in your city that can come in office with you, they're always going to be the best resource for you, even if it comes at a cost higher. Because when you can capture the essence of what needs to be done in a room physically next to you and build that person, money's not really that big of an issue.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Scale Business podcast. My name is Hector Santiesteban and I am your host. Our special guest today is Mr. Patrick Doyle Brown, and he's someone who has helped businesses for years really scale through developing better systems and also helps people to be able to run and drive those systems as well. So Patrick, welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you for having me, Hector. It's a pleasure to be on. Excited to have a conversation.
I'm always excited to talk with people like you because I had a call with a friend earlier today where I was just basically, it was sort of a one of those business therapy talks where I I sort of vomited where I, was. And really it's just because I think that there's such a need for an integrator role, right? And I'm the creative, I'm the loony, that's got all the ideas. And so much of my growth has been finding and surrounding myself with people who I'd imagine like you who are capable of building and running the systems that actually drive things on a day-to-day basis. So tell me how you got into this world and some of what are the few stops along the way were and a little bit about what you do with your clients now.
Sure. And I would love to talk shop with you one time on that because you need a friend that can honestly tell you sometimes your ideas are stupid. Don't do it. Like we I know I need a friend like that in therapy sometimes that don't do that. You haven't thought it through. So anytime. But so I first started off in IT, building out infrastructure. So when you're building a business and you're trying to create systems, a guy like me would actually architect the data and IT and how all the machines and processes talk to each other. And I was doing really well with projects in the United States, and I had built a team to take care of all the ads, moves, and changes in Tempe, Arizona. And over time, what would happen is the payroll costs would increase and I would keep losing people due to, the smaller businesses have a problem where you find talent, you build talent, and then bigger companies with bigger checkbooks take them away. So you just get into the cycle where you become a farm team for large companies. So what I started to do is I started to build connections I had while I was in the service. They introduced me to some people in Manila, Philippines, where I then built and trenched in my own customers. I built my own teams out there. And it became a lot more stable because the issue with American labor right now isn't affordability as much people say it is. It's the fact that people really need to increase the wages, the quality of life fast. And unfortunately, in businesses, 90% of what you're doing is really repetitive, tasks that are very tier one. And at the end of the day, you have to create and scale your payroll to match that model. And what I did is I did all the level one work in the Philippines, creative strategic work here in the United States, and magically my margins got back. But it wasn't so much the payroll savings, it's the fact that when you invest in people and you build people, the longer they stay, the greater your human capital return is. And when people stay in a job for 2 or 3 years and they just know what to do, that is so valuable to a founder because you don't have to retrain anybody. You don't have to teach anybody. It is just so painful for someone you've invested years in to then pull up stakes and move somewhere. And to create a system that does both is what I did. We became successful, and a lot of my clients I supported in IT, they asked me to help build teams in the Philippines too, because they didn't know how to do it. I had gone there and figured it out with friends, and that's how I got into this business. And it's been great.
What I'm curious is when you talk to business owners about sort of what you're talking about and getting them onto your side, what misconceptions or what sort of false beliefs do they have about what you're doing and about sort of what creating these systems, all the pieces together, like what don't they understand about it?
So I like to start off by saying America has an amazing workforce that is very creative and creates such incredibly technological advances in a lot of different things. But the concept that people that are on the other side of an ocean or continent are less smart than them or not as capable is completely false. So I get the idea a lot of times, the misconception that the quality of work in the Philippines and Mexico is not at the same level as America. And what you have to understand is America is a very individualistic and a very rugged society. We're tough. There's something about the American business culture that is very entrepreneurial and willing to take risks. The Asian market is more collective. They do what's best for a large group of people. Mexico's somewhere in the middle. So you can have a creative, very amazing risk and design team in the United States, but they're not the same people that are going to do repetitive tasks over and over to such a high level of degree. It's just two different workforces. But if you put the workforces together, you can create amazing things. We could not create Apple iPhones all in America because of this concept. Counting, and it goes all across industries. So the misconception that once the work leaves these shores is going to be of less quality should be by now, you know, removed, but it's still there. And so I have to often tell people that the services I provide just creates a system of compliance and high level of execution that is repeatable and scalable.
Yeah, I have a mentor who is a big proponent of, international talent. And what he also said, which I think makes a lot of sense and perhaps could add, I'd love to get your take on it, is that you mentioned, America being rugged and that certain countries or certain areas, certain communities exhibit and index higher on certain traits, right? And so, he found that certain areas were better at a certain skill set and other areas excelled at other things. What are your thoughts on saying, going to one area to get web development and going to another area to get creative work? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, all day long. So an American can sell anything. We sell everything under the roof. We do it with a smile on our face all day, every day. But when's the last time you saw someone of Asian descent on a corner trying to sell you a car? It's just so it's different traits, different processes. And, we see American forward, the ability for Americans to start a conversation, build rapport, and to create that initial relationship is better than any place in the world. In Eastern Europe, that's where the best web development, part of it in India too. A lot of really amazing, beautiful design work is done in Europe, European fashion and web overall design. In Asia, really repetitive accounting type work, customer service work, tech support work. And in Latin America, very good hospitality, very warm, very full of life, very vibrant. And so, for whatever product you're building and making, getting international talent that has a flavor of what you need for your customer experience is key for because there's so much amazing international talent. And unfortunately, for those countries, the business opportunities in America, you can't even match it. So America has all the business opportunities, and tapping into that international talent pool is not as hard as you think, but you do need a guide because there's some rules you want to follow.
I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day that it was something to the effect of, I don't pay my people based on what they should make in their area or based on the other country's sort of difference in currency, right? And I think they said it as sort of a point of pride, which I totally respect. And also, well, is there an opportunity there to find really high talent to pay what to an American would not be a livable wage, but to somebody else, to in another country is perhaps a great opportunity for them.
And that's where I get into a lot of very uncomfortable conversations because if I pay a Filipino $1,500 a month, their quality of life is higher than somebody in San Francisco getting paid $7,000 a month. So I try not to compare the different markets and the rates required for a certain standard of living. I pride myself on being able to support a company who needs to have margins above a certain percentage for their investors. And then the agents and the employees that we hire that live a higher quality of life once they come under our employment. And then the market's going to take care of itself. We have AI personnel that in the Philippines their salaries I've had to double and triple in some cases just in the last 6 months because the global pool of AI talent does not recognize borders. This person can earn $4,000 as long as they deliver the implementation of an AI workflow from wherever he's at in his pajamas. They don't care. So I take a lot of pride when I get back I'm in the Philippines every 3 months. People are buying houses, they're buying cars, their quality of life is increasing. My clients' business is stabilized and their margins are healthy. And that is, for me, that's all I can do. I don't really control cost, markets and what demands are for living somewhere. That's another discussion one day, but that's the trifecta. Is it good for the client? Is it good for the agent? Is unity benefit?
Well, I appreciate you taking the hardball questions here. The reason is I think if once someone can get past those, then the floodgates open up, right? Then the opportunity, because now they have so much leverage now that I think they didn't realize what was in front of them. So once they've realized, okay, we're going to sort of take this path and this is going to be the way that we go, what's the order of operations, or what is the steps? Are there pillars? Like, how do you look at, sort of the landscape of what they're going to be, what they should be thinking about?
Yeah, so most founders and people running startups, they will run into a bottleneck with their either on the floor with their frontline people or other spots. Usually, people will try to add personnel in their own area. The what I call the home field advantage, people in your area, people in your city that can come in office with you, they're always going to be the best resource for you, even if it comes at a cost higher, because when you can capture the essence of what needs to be done in a room physically next to you and build that person, money's not really that big of an issue. But when you're scaling it, let's say you have a SaaS product and now you need customer service to get done at a certain level. Then when you contact a firm like ours, we will look at the job descriptions and we will then propose to put together a workflow and a personnel that will fulfill that workflow, and usually a cost per hour. $9, $10 an hour in most cases in the Philippines. Sometimes those workflows are not a good fit for the Philippines. For example, if it's sales or relationship building or Mexico. And really, at the end of the day, where is the bottleneck happening? A lot of founders, they need a good person to bounce ideas off to see where's the bottleneck. Does it make sense to automate it? Does it make sense to have people? And we always see which one makes sense. But you just have the conversation first.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I've seen hold business owners back is their ability to create use cases, right? A lot of times they can't wrap their head around what's possible now. And I think, things have moved so quickly that, they're just trying to figure out, how to create a recipe in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And so what are some of the cool things that you see businesses doing that are, maybe to make this question a little harder, might surprise people with how either simple or inexpensive they are to automate and sort of outsource?
So I would say probably one thing I was surprised is where a lot of people start off is having somebody manage your social media accounts. Why is a founder or a starter in social media all day long? Okay, what are you learning from? Having somebody go and represent you, and you got to remember the younger generations, the 20s, 30s, they're better at social media. They're better at communicating with emojis, and they know the slang better, and probably in 3 or 4 different languages. So a lot of times people will outsource managing social media, tagging photos, replying to emails, and monitoring those. So the 2 to 3 hours that they did spend on these platforms, they are not distracted because all of a sudden they're designed to grab your attention, and then all of a sudden they're doom scrolling for another hour. So it's a matter of where is your time better focused? Should you be spending it on social media? Should you be answering emails? Should you be spending that extra hours, researching your competitors' price plans? So what we see with a lot of e-commerce companies is they will outsource a resource to us just to do market research. This is the product I'm selling. Go to my 50 competitors and tell me what their prices are. And so I can create, and then they'll program AI to then give them daily price changes and evaluations, and then they'll create a dashboard. So from a simple agent just managing and looking at prices of your competitors, you now can create your own little algorithm on what the market's doing and changing on all your competitors that could be updated real time.
Are there any things that can help someone if they're going to get going down this road? That when we work with, we have a podcast production company. And so, it's amazing when people, they come to us and they've got their branding and they've got their headshots and they've got sort of these things already dialed in, because then it makes it easy to just pick those up and now we can go execute it, and everything's downhill from there. Are there things that people need to get in line or get in order to sort of get their house in order, if you will, to make this whole thing go easier?
So there's one thing that almost all of them forget to do, and it's called a customer journey map. So a lot of times people spend hours and hours researching, where do we want to be? Do we want to be SEO? Do we want to, do Google ads? Do we want to do direct marketing? So what we always see very good founders do, especially in incubators, is they start with the customer journey map where they pretend they're the customer and they're looking for to buy a product. And they basically write down all the places that their product would be if they were to go looking for a product or service in that area. And then you just create this pinpoint that if you just pretend you're a CFO, you just pretend you're a CEO, you pretend you're these different roles and you have this problem, and how would they buy your product and service? So it'll tell you in the customer journey map will tell you, do you need to be in retail stores? Do you need physical advertising? And then that's where you should focus, where to position yourself in the acquisition strategy. Because if you don't have an acquisition plan on getting customers, then what are you doing? And I use McDonald's all the time as an example. McDonald's marketing is so good and so strong that most of America will eat terrible food just because the marketing is so good. I am a victim of that all the time because it's convenient. But because their marketing is so good, you are always reminded that it's right around the corner because they know their customer. Find out where you need to place yourself first and first and second, because you can have the greatest product or service in the world, but if it's not placed correctly and if you don't have a good strategy for people to find you, then it's all for nothing. You'll run out of time or money, and you can't run out of one.
Yeah, what's really seems to be the opportunity for a lot of business owners is to to have a new lever on time, whether it's through delegation, outsourcing, or even through automation. I mean, they can really amp up their level of impact if they're willing to create these systems. And then what is also an important piece for, I think, for people to remember is that you still need a human to kind of drive them. Like, as great as AI is and as powerful as AI is, there's sometimes where I go, you are so smart. And then in the next moment, I'm like, you are so dumb, and I'm talking to the same thing. So I'll just leave it there. Like, it seems like that's sort of the 1-2 punch that you've assembled is the ability for them to have these systems and then have people behind them that are really, driving it.
Yeah, trust but verify. So we have automated systems behind people, but automated systems really, at the end of the day, they break because all you need is one firmware update, one SKU that needs to be updated. Now you have to reset the entire automation process. And it only takes one terrible review on social media or Yelp to ruin hundreds of reviews that were doing good. Nobody remembers what you did well. They always remember what you suck at. And so you really have to be on top of that customer experience because it's just too easy to ruin a brand compared to the years it takes to build it.
Yeah. And as I'm sort of reflecting on my experience with automations, it's like it's one of those things where you set it up and it's like, all right, don't touch it, like hopefully nothing goes wrong, hopefully that is this everything stays perfect. In the moment you sort of veer away from from adjustments, and it prevents you, or sort of puts constraints on there. I found that it's helpful for people to have an integrator in doing this, that even if you, as much as I really enjoy nerding out on some of these things, I get about an hour into it and I back up and I go, there's someone who's way better than me at this, way smarter than me, and is going to do it way faster. And again, that's leveraging other people's talents to be able to do it, I think is huge. So I would encourage business owners not to feel like they have to take this all on their own.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of really great talent worldwide. I always tell people though, eat your own dog food first. So if you're launching a customer service desk, you really should be the one taking the first 100 calls. If you delegate that task before you do it yourself as a founder, then you're setting the next person up for failure. Simply because, number one, people will respect you more if you take those calls yourself, but these are your customers. They're going to give you the best data on the field than ever. And then once you have an idea of the temperature, then you could put the right person that can deal with those sessions, calls, emails, texts, whatever it is for you. And I see lots of founders that don't want to do that front level or frontline work. And unfortunately, I don't see many of them succeed. And the one thing about Jeff Bezos that I have a lot of respect for is he will stock shelves. At the early days of Amazon, he would demand everybody in leadership would man a warehouse, including himself.
Yeah, I think it's helpful for people to do it. And I always tell myself something one of my early sales mentors told me. And it was a good thing to like get you through those tough sales, just whether we were doing calls or recruiting activities. And he's just like, we're doing it now so we don't ever have to do it again. And I'm like, all right, but
Yeah,
for me, that is doing it and then documenting it, right? That was sort of the missing link. And so when you do that and you document it, now you're able to have someone, take it and run it the way that it's supposed to run.
I still have my original cold calling scripts memorized in my head. So, but later on, now that I'm at the executive level, me calling another CEO to solve a problem is not an issue. After you get rejected so many times, what's the level of conflict about resolving an invoice? No big deal.
Yeah, it was never the calls that bothered me. I could get through the calls. It was we had to pass out flyers in the sun in the summer. I was a 17-year-old kid who was just would rather be at the beach with, you know, doing stupid stuff.
This actually goes into one of the things that in America labor force that we have a problem competing with is apps. So you have a 27-year-old labor force that has work available to them on demand. How do you compete against that? So a person can just deliver food for $20 an hour when they want, how they want. How do I get mid 20-year-olds, early 30-year-olds to actually commit to an office job? And that's why a lot of people outsource to us, because that demographic is used to being able to work when they want, how they want, and they don't want to commit to any. And unfortunately, in our business, we need somebody that can commit to a schedule. I really hope that we figure that out.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity for people. Patrick, two questions as we sort of round our way out of here. The first is, if people want to get more connected with you, if they've got questions, they want to connect with you, where and how is the best place to do that?
I'm so easily able to schedule. Just go to my website, contact, and you'll see my calendar right there. I have 700 employees, but you can still schedule directly with me anytime you want.
We'll link all that up in the chat there for you. And my last question for you is, in your opinion, what is the secret to scaling a business?
Do not spend beyond your means. Stay within your lane. Don't chase after shiny objects. And always, always be selling. Without revenue coming in, it's just a matter of time.